everyone, and welcome to another episode of Moon Beam Musings. Today, we're talking about astrology and the history of astrology. Now, astrology is one of the most enduring practices in human history, dating back over 4,000 years. Its origins can be traced to ancient Babylon, where early star charts and celestial observations were used to track seasons and guide agricultural practices. From there, astrology spread to ancient Egypt, where it influenced the development of the zodiac, and to Greece, where philosophers like Ptolemy formalized it into a system still recognized today. Across the world, from China to the Americas, astrology has played a profound role in shaping cultures, guiding decisions, and offering a lens to understand the universe and our place within it. But why has astrology stood the test of time? What is it about the stars, the planets, and their symbolic meanings that continue to resonate with us, even in our modern science-driven world? Today, I'm thrilled to explore these questions with my guest, Anita Chakraburtty, an astrology expert and consultant, herbalist, and shamanic healer. Together, we'll delve into the rich history of astrology, its cultural significance, and why it still matters today. So let's dive in. Welcome, Anita. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thanks for inviting me, Philippa. I'm very excited to talk about one of my favourite subjects.
So let's start off. Can you explain what astrology is and the core of why it has endured for thousands of years across various cultures?
So, astrology is essentially a study of the movement of the planets in the sky and how they interact with your astrological chart. Okay, so that's one aspect of astrology where you look at a person's birth chart and how the positions of the planet in their houses, and that's known as kind of, birth chart reading. Another approach that you would use is where you do some forecasting, where you look ahead 6 months, 12 months. So again, that's the planets in the sky and how they interact with your astrology chart over 6 months, 12 months. And it all came about, my understanding is, from Babylonia. So in the area of Mesopotamia, that I think is now modern Iran, Iraq. Around 1800 BCE is when they first started to note the positions of the planets using cuneiform, with the nails. That's how they did their writing, the Mesopotamians. And it was all connected to the royal family and, the positions of the planets in the sky. When a son was born, they'd make a note of that. Position of the planets when a daughter was born, they'd make a note of that. Position of the planets when they had a good harvest, they'd make a note of that. When they had a poor harvest. When the river Tigris flooded, they'd make a note of that. So it was really, my previous background was in, banking and big data and data analytics, and really what went on in Mesopotamia and then moved to sort of Greece and Rome was big data analytics. So they were collecting years and years and daily measures of all the different planets and what was going on situationally. Was there a war? Did they win the war? How was the marriage between the king and queen? What was the new bride to the prince like? Harvest, earthquake, volcanic eruptions, floods. So all that information was gathered so that in the future they knew that when certain planetary positions were happening, they could say, look, we think the river Tigris is going to flood. So let's kind of start putting some sandbags and protecting ourselves. Or we think we might go into conflict with another city, so let's start arming ourselves. So it originated in Babylonia, Mesopotamia, and there was also India, where astrology came via the Jyotish astrologers and the Indian monks. And then Indian monks took it to China. So China also has a big background and history of astrology in excess of 1,000 years. And then we've got what was happening in South America with the Mayans as well. So it is really global. I mean, there's Native Americans, Inuits have background in astrology as well. And in the UK, we've got the Druids. So they were astrologers as well. And if you think of Stonehenge being positioned for the summer solstice, Newgrange in Ireland positioned for the winter solstice, they've been around for thousands of years. And sorry, you mentioned about why it's endured. That was your second question. I think as humans, we want to feel kind of connected to the cosmos in some way. And I think it's inherent in us because our ancestors would look at the cycles of the sun related to the seasons, related to night and day. Yeah. The moon and the tides, if some of our ancestors were fishermen, then, the spring tides and autumn tides, king tides, they were all connected to the moon. So you'd know, should we go and fish or not fish? Not just looking at the weather. The moon can predict things, in advance of you knowing what the weather's going to be like. Also, I think things kind of came up during the pandemic. I saw my own astrology business pick up significantly in 2020, 2021, because people had job uncertainty, health uncertainty, financial uncertainty, business uncertainty, people that were sole traders. So they were looking to other forms of divination in a way to give them some answers to their questions that no one could really answer. But I think for especially like the more young generation, so the millennials now, I think astrology is a good tool for you to interpret different aspects of your life. Yeah. And I think the millennials are very self-aware and do a lot of self-work on themselves. And astrology helps you look at your identity, so your character, your personality, whether you have anxiety, whether you have depression, whether you're creative, whether you're more analytical. And it, helps you navigate the onion layers of your psyche and your character, as well as, astrology will help you look at patterns in your life connected to your romantic relationships, your business relationships, your career, your health, your finances. So it's a way of navigating the intricacies of life by connecting with the cosmos and tapping into something external to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, how do you feel that people used astrology in the past differently to how they used it today? Do you think there's a big difference?
I don't think there was a huge difference. I mean, my knowledge is more about UK-based astrology that came via Greece and Hellenistic astrology, and then the Arab world, and then the medieval astrologers, because I am a medieval astrologer. And that's just got more of a level of complexity to it than modern astrology. Yeah, so it's similar but different. And medieval astrologers were someone like Nicholas Culpeper. He was a herbalist and a nutritionist. He wrote Culpeper's Herbal, which brought herbal medicine to the masses because it was written in English, when a lot of texts in the medical community were all written in Latin because they weren't for the common people to understand. But if you went to go and see Nicholas Culpeper, as soon as you walked into his little apothecary shop in the East End of London, he would draw a chart of the question that you asked him. Yeah. So I've got a bad headache. What can you do for my headache? That might be the question. Or the time of that question, you would draw a chart, which is known as a decumbiture chart. And based on that chart, you could work out the type of illness a person has, the type of herbs that would be beneficial, and whether your treatment would be successful or unsuccessful, and how long that person would be ill. So there's a branch of astrology that's known as medical astrology. So you could and astrologers were being used for romantic reasons. I like this fellow, he was born in this town on this day, can you look at our charts and see if we're compatible? And I think there was there's a saying in the astrology community, millionaires don't use astrologers, but billionaires do. And the kings and queens had the royal court astrologer, who was the second most important person in the kingdom. So Dr. John Dee was Elizabeth I's astrologer, and he set the coronation date, and she ruled for over 40 years. Whereas prior to her, they had very short term. After Henry VIII died, they had three different, well, King Edward VI, who was very young. He died after about 3 years, I think. Then there was maybe Mary Queen of Scots, and then, Lady Jane Grey for like 10 days. So it was a very unstable time. So when Elizabeth I was given the baton, she probably thought, oh my God, how long am I going to be queen for? 5 days, 10 days, 1 year? So she asked John Dee to cast a chart for the most auspicious date, and he set that date, and she ended up being queen for like over 40 years. So people use astrologers in, the 1400s, 1500s in a similar way that they're using them now. So I don't think it has really changed, although astrology in the 1800s started to lose popularity because that was a massive renaissance in science. And then it was started to be seen that it's not science, it's quackery, it's divination, it's not based on anything scientific. So it kind of fell foul a little bit in the 1900, early 1900s.
Whereas actually, from what you've been saying, there was thousands of years of evidence and data, which is what science is about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So what made you get into astrology after your previous career?
So I think everybody, I can only talk about my generation. So, when I was growing up, you'd get like Jackie magazine or Misty magazine with like the comic strip things going on, but with photographs and air bubbles. And there was a astrology column there, that would say this is what's going to happen for Aries, Gemini, Libra. So I think that's a lot of people's first introduction to astrology. It's either in a magazine that they read as a teenager or in the newspapers. So, the newspapers used to have, Jonathan Caner in the Daily Mail, Mystic Meg in the Sun. So I used to read those, and, I wasn't heavily into it, I have to say, but I was mildly interested. And then my banking career took me to Australia when I was in my early 30s. And back in 2003, Australian people were drinking green juice for breakfast, whereas, English people in 2003 were eating bacon butties and a coffee with like 3 sugars in it. So, 20 plus years ago, Australia was very healthy. And, based on that, people in Australia, they were seeing osteopaths and chiropractors and massage naturopaths. So we're seeing all these alternative people. It was common. And so I ended up doing a degree in herbal medicine and nutrition, which is naturopathy. And in the college, you could study just a short weekend course in astrology. That piqued my interest. So then I looked online to see if there's any astrology meetups that happen, even though my knowledge of astrology from a weekend was, non-existent, really.
Yeah.
And then through going to the New South Wales astrology groups that I was meeting up with, New South Wales Astrology Association, you start to hear all these different speakers talking about all the different astrology, financial astrology, mundane astrology, which is looking at world events, and then astrology of different asteroids. And I was just like, wow, this is like amazing. There's so much to it. So I ended up studying modern astrology for a year with Dr. Neil Hare, who was the president of the New South Wales Astrology Association. And then after modern astrology, I went to an astrology conference in Brisbane, and I saw a few medieval astrology people give a 1-hour lecture. And I sat in this lecture and thought, I think I've got a reasonable foundation in astrology, and yet what these people are saying, I don't understand. And I've got a master's degree in chemistry. And I thought, what they're talking about is so complicated, I want to learn it. So 2 ladies, Mari Garcia and Joy Usher, their school was called Astro Mundi, and I did a 4-year diploma in astrology. So essentially, by me studying herbal medicine and nutrition, because the college had astrology there, I thought, I can study it, I'm quite interested in it. And then from that, it just grew into a yeah, well, a big passion of mine.
Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you, Lisa. I think, I will say I'm a bit biased with astrology, because I've been fascinated with it since I was younger too. And I've also was more of the data analytical and maths thinking myself. So I'm not talking about the generalized magazine and blog astrology, but the charts themselves really fascinated me. And I had my birth chart done when I was very young. Um, and I think also, the pattern element of it myself, I'm interested in that. And I could see the patterns. And I read quite a few books by Linda Goodman, who I thought was absolutely brilliant and very, very accurate. So I will give that disclaimer to this because I'm not impartial. I really, I really have seen the patterns I've seen in my lifetime from it. And I think you have to sometimes you live these things, and what well, we all know that sometimes with different scientific methods, there's a short-term um, data analysis of a trial, whereas this has got years, thousands of years. Why would people follow it for thousands of years if there was nothing in it?
Yeah, it would have fallen by the wayside a long time ago. And for it to also be so prevalent in so many different countries now, and countries where, science and technology is massive. If you look at India, India is a country where astrology is very ingrained in their cultural life, but also in their religious life. There are certain lunar days where people will fast based on the moon. There are certain gemstones that they wear on their fingers, on specific fingers, that relate to different planets that can help them financially, romantically, health-wise. In medical astrology, for example, Mercury is about your lungs and it's about the nervous system. It's about your hands and fingers. So you might wear a specific gem that's ruled by Mercury if you've got like arthritis, say in India, or some lung issues. Jupiter rules the liver. So if you've got some liver issues in India, or lower back and hips is Jupiter ruled, then, Indian people might wear a stone connected to Jupiter on the finger that's connected to Jupiter. Mars is about blood. So if you had anemia, you'd wear a gemstone connected to Mars on your Mars finger. Most Hindus, when they get married, they consult an astrologer to look for an auspicious marriage date. And I've done that for couples. It's called electional astrology, when someone elects the date. So you look for the most auspicious date. And also when you do meet someone through, either a romantic scenario or an arranged marriage, one of the first things they do is they go and see an astrologer to do synastry of, the couple, and look at their chart. What's the strength and weakness? Is their longevity? In China, feng shui, which is the way that you would, lay out your home in an auspicious way in certain rooms for certain, certain things, whether it's health, whether it's wealth, whether it's spiritual, whether it's love. But, buildings are, businesses are set up on auspicious date. That's connected to astrology as well, So, yeah, even very high-powered technical civilizations now, astrology is very ingrained in their society,
Mm.
even when they're very technical people. If you think of the Chinese and if you think of the Indians.
I guess astrology, like you've just explained before, it reflects the human desire for meaning and order, really, in life. Especially as you said during the times of COVID, when people were looking for, they had so much uncertainty, they're looking for answers, and it is a way, it's a tool, isn't it? And for me personally, I feel like it's a great tool to use as long as you don't get too obsessed with it. You carry on living your own life, but it's a really great tool to use. And also, it's important to go to see someone who's fully qualified as well, because
believe it or not,
yeah.
there is the Association for Professional Astrologers International, which is known as the APAI, and it is an international astrology association. You're vetted before you can become a member, and so anyone on that website is a fully qualified and probably fully insured astrologer. So,
Hmm.
I've done a 4-year diploma. That's kind of the sort of things they would be looking for if you wanted to become an APAI member. So, in the first instance of looking for an astrologer, if none of your friends or family have seen one that they thought was, a good astrologer or not, then that would be a good website to go to, the APAI.
Thank you very much. We'll add that below in the description. And one thing I wondered if you could expand on was when you were talking about Mars fingers and things like this, I assume you're talking about a certain way of looking at the human anatomy. And if you could just explain what you're referring to there in case people don't know.
So in medical astrology, and also just general astrology, different zodiac signs relate to different parts of the body. So Aries relates to the head in medical astrology. So an Aries person has a predisposition to perhaps have things going on with their head. I mean, if you think of Aries as the ball, I remember at I'm an Aries, so one of my birthday parties in Tooting when I was about 7 or 8, I decided to do an Olympic course, obviously being an Aries, wanting to win some competition. And I was doing the long jump. Yeah, I was organising the long jump for me and my friends. And it was just a skipping rope, just getting moved, a bit more, a bit more, a bit more. And yeah, at my own birthday party, I did the bestest long jump that I could, and just went splat on some bricks. So the edge of the grass had bricks that were on an angle. Yeah, so the pointy bit of the bricks, and I basically head planted, and yeah. So there are photos from the late 1970s of me, like with this plaster on my head, blowing out my candles with my pigtails, But Aries rules the head, and a lot of Aries may suffer from headaches. They might have head injuries from falling over, and it's more that kind of Aries wanting to be first and wanting to kind of be in the lead and just that impulsivity. But they're also prone to anything dental. They're prone to blocked ears. They're prone to eyes. So they're more prone to thyroid issues, laryngitis. I'm already starting to feel funny throat talking about Taurus. I mentioned Gemini people ruled by the planet Mercury. That's about lungs. That's about the nervous system, hands and fingers. Cancerian people. That's the breast area that Cancer rules. Libra people. There tends to be a bit of blood sugar regulation. So Libra is about the pancreas and the kidney. So there can be, urinary concerns. And, Pisces rules the feet. So a lot of Piscean people or people with a lot of Piscean planets may have foot and ankle issues, whether it's bunions, whether it's flat feet, whether it's weak ankles that turn. So, Jupiter rules the liver and the hips. So each zodiac sign is ruled by a planet, and that planet is connected to a different part of the body.
Great, thank you for explaining that. What I wanted to ask you was more about some of your experiences really with astrology, and if you had any great examples that you'd be happy to share with us.
Yeah, I'm
Obviously,
happy
not naming people, but
so my own personal experience, the biggest one was in 2005. 2015, I mean. I knew kind of like the year before that in 2015, the planet Uranus, which is about unexpected sudden change, was going to be sitting on my sun. Yeah. So that means it's me and a change in status in my life based on this Uranus suddenly going to make me do some big change. Yeah. So I was sort of tracking it in 2014 and nothing really happened, and then 2015 nothing really happened, and literally the day I went, wow, I've escaped this Uranus on my sun malarkey, nothing dramatic's happened. Literally a few days later I started feeling, and this is when I was living in Sydney, I started feeling like, oh, my intuition was saying time for you to go back to London. And I was like, no, I'm not going back to London. I've got a beautiful beach, 3-minute walk from my house. I'm at the Opera House, half an hour on the bus. Like, I live in paradise. Why would I go back to Tooting Broadway? And this got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that started in June 2015. In August 2015, I was on a plane back to London after 12 years in Sydney. And I didn't cry. Yeah. Even though I've been there 12 years, had amazing friends. I lived in this lovely flat that I rented. I'd been there for like 8, 9 years, right by the sea. I just thought I basically threw my stuff on the street, really, because I thought I'm not going to photograph it and put it on eBay. I haven't got time. I need to go to England when it's summer. I'm not going to go to England in January and mess around with all these stuff in my flat trying to sell it. Anyway, so that was a personal experience of Uranus on my sun, sudden, unemotional, dramatic change, and it just when I went, oh, I've escaped, it didn't escape. Yeah. In terms of clients, I had a client in January 2024, and I did a 1-year look ahead reading for her. And I said to her during the reading, in the summer 2024, I see a romantic experience for you. And she said, I'm not interested in any romance. My husband left me 17 years ago. I'm not interested in getting involved with anyone. Like, okay. This was in January, yeah, and I told her in the summer 2024. And then I said, October 2024, I see you going overseas and it's connected with this romantic person. And she said, I haven't been on a plane for 30 years. I've got an abject fear of flying, so I won't be going overseas. And I was like, okay. So that was the reading in January 2024 that I mentioned about summer 24 and October 24. In September 2024, she rang me and she said, in the summer, I went to a conference and one of the keynote speakers was really good, and I would never normally do this, but I went up to him in the break and we had a chat. We ended up having lunch. We exchanged email addresses and we emailed regularly. Then we exchanged phone numbers. We started texting. Then we started chatting. Now we speak an hour every day. I really, really like him. He really, really likes me. I'm like, oh, fantastic. And my intuition said, he lives overseas. So I said, he lives overseas, doesn't? And she went, yeah, he's in America. And I went, oh, okay. So you're going to go and see him in October, aren't you? And she went, yeah, I'm having counselling to get over my fear of flying. But yeah, I'm planning to go to America in October. And then another story is a client who saw me. I did a 6-month reading for her. And during that reading, I could see that there was relationship difficulty happening from a long-term relationship. So I mentioned it to her and she said, yeah, I'm fed up with my boyfriend and we're going to break up because I've had enough, really. And we're just arguing all the time. So I was like, okay. So then she came back to me 6 months later for another 6-month reading. And in that reading, I saw a pregnancy. And I thought, I have to mention it to her because you can't just tell everyone lovely, lovely things all the time. As an astrologer, you're going to be balanced. Yeah. Anyway, I said to her, look, I see a pregnancy in 3 months' time. And just, if you want it, fine. If you don't, I know you're single. So just take precautions. She's like, oh, I'm not going to get pregnant. I'm not silly. I'll take precautions. Yeah, okay, good. I'm just letting you know that's what I'll see in 3 months' time. In 3 months after that, I got a text from her saying, you're a witch. I'm pregnant by my ex-boyfriend from a random hookup. But because we haven't been seeing each other for like 9 months, we're kind of getting on really well and we're going to give it a go with the baby and everything. So it's all good.
Wow. So, yeah, the power of astrology.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But my most well, not famous because I don't know if they've still got a recording, but in mid-January 2020, I was on Riverside Radio in Wandsworth, in Battersea, in the
Yeah.
studio, and I was with Martin Adams, and it was mainly sort of astrology outlook for, the next few months.
Hmm.
But more about, Capricorn and Libra, and more specific to, zodiac signs, yeah? But I threw in a little bit of mundane astrology and I said, look, Neptune is right next to the moon in the 6th house of the UK chart. 6th house is about health. The moon is about the people. Neptune is about infection. So like there's some infection that's going to be quite big in the next few months in the UK. So that was mid-January 2020. No one cared about infection then because there was some virus in China that, was affecting some people. But mid-January 2020, that's when Meghan and Harry announced that they were exiting the royal family. So everybody that rang in and everybody that tweeted wanted my astrological views on Meghan and Harry. No one asked me about a virus that may impact the UK.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible. It sounds like astrology has so many routes you can go down. There's more than even I realized, with the different astrology from different cultures. You can specialize in different areas. I know you yourself, like you've just said, you can do charts with a person to look at from where they were born and their life and their personality and what sort of jobs could fit them. You can do uh, charts that look at relationships between two people. You're kind of looking at the future charts, which is what you've just been discussing there, both from a personal point of view, but also related to a country, even, which is quite
Yeah,
incredible. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So if someone new to astrology was really interested in looking further into it, so they're not overwhelmed, is there a starting point, maybe some books or an organization you could recommend?
Um, Look, I would say if Linda Goodman's books are still available, I mean, that's what set me on my astrology path. I would say that that's a really good starting point. Um, the only problem I have with recommending anything is I'm because I'm a professional astrologer. I've been doing it for 14 years. Everything that I know about is for other astrologers. Yeah, and I've had instances where I've done talks for the Astrological Lodge of London in Baker Street, and some of my lovely friends have wanted to come, and I've said, look, it's going to be too complicated. You won't understand it. And some of my friends are like, we know astrology. Don't be so elitist. And I'm like, okay, come, yeah, but you won't understand it. And I've had friends come, and they're like, I don't understand it. I didn't understand what anyone was talking about. And I'm like, yeah. So I'd say Linda Goodman is a good starting point, and then I don't really know what the next step would be. I mean, also because I did all my studying in um, Australia, but the Astrological Lodge of London do a free beginners class. It's not going to give you a piece of paper qualification. It's something you can drop into, drop out of. So maybe attending one of those free classes, so you can book it on their website. That will just give you an idea about, a planet or a house. They'll go into that in the beginners class. And then from that, if you're kind of really kind of passionate about it, then you could look online at various courses that you could do to do something more formal. But I'd say start with Linda Goodman, maybe look at the Astrological Lodge of London, and register with some of their beginners classes that are free, so you don't have to commit to it if you just want to randomly bob in, bob out. And then if you think you want to commit to something, there are lots of different in-person and online schools of astrology that you can study, whether it's modern astrology, esoteric astrology, which is more spiritual, traditional astrology, which is the medieval astrology that I studied, Vedic astrology, so Indian astrology, which is a whole nother branch. There'll be Chinese astrologers that teach Chinese astrology. So, I'm not trying to overwhelm people, but once you sort of delve into it, then that you'll kind of find your way.
Yeah, and I'd say probably the first step as well would be to get your own chart done by someone who's a professional like yourself, because then I think you can really understand how you relate to your own birth chart. And that's a starting point with kind of understanding the different houses and planets. I know that definitely helped me when I was looking at astrology.
Yeah, definitely. If you get your birth chart done by a professional astrologer, then they will explain in detail the different houses, the planets in the houses, the angles between the planets, whether the planets are strong, whether the planets are weak or difficult. They'll describe your character, your personality, your health, patterns in your life to do with business relationship, personal relationship, your finances, the way you think. Past lives can even be seen in a chart by looking at the North Node, South Node. And if after that experience you think, wow, like that person knows me better than my best friends, which is what I get told by so many clients, like, you know everything about me and you've never even met me until today. That can ignite something in a person, that they want to learn more of how you can understand a person so well just from their chart.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Anita. I know that you're often doing, high level talks in across the UK. You're based in London now, just to clarify that for everybody. And also you're on the radio quite often, so which is brilliant. And so we are very grateful to have you here. And it would be great if you could let everybody know if they were interested in having a reading with you, because you do actually do personal readings as well as the sort of training that you do with more advanced professionals. So how would they go about getting in contact with you?
Yeah, so my website is www.multidimensionalhealing.co.uk, and my email is anita@multidimensionalhealing.co.uk. But yeah, they could have a look at my website. I'm a herbalist, nutritionist, shamanic healer, and astrology, but there is a separate astrology section on my website they can read up about. And yeah, just give me a call. We can have a chat and see what reading would fit, whether it's a birth chart reading, 6 months, 12 months look ahead, whether it's, a business joint venture that you're thinking of setting up. It's not just relationship charts in terms of romance, but you can look at if you're going to set up business with someone, strengths and weaknesses. But I'll do relationship charts as well. And electional charts, if there's a date you want to launch your book or open your shop or get married or release a single, then it's good to connect with an astrologer. Think of Elizabeth I. All the three previous kings and queens were quite short-lived, and then she was on the throne for over 40 years because of Dr. John Dee and her brilliant chart.
Great. Well, that's wonderful. Actually, you've triggered me thinking about some of the things I need to speak to you about. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And all of those details as well that you've just said will be down in the description, so people can have a look down there. They don't need to memorize it. Great. Well, thank you very much, Anita.
Thank you, and have a good rest of your day, Philippa.